everyone, and welcome to the platform of Shri Ram's IAS once again. And in today's session, we'll be discussing about the making of the Indian Constitution right after the independence. In previous sessions, what we have discussed so far is how we have, the various acts which were shaped during the colonial as well as during the company's rule and as well as Crown's rule. They have shaped the evolution of the Indian Constitution. But however, in today's session, we'll be discussing the making of the Indian Constitution and also the Constituent Assembly that led to the formulation of the Constitution of India. Now, when we are talking about the constitutionalism in India, the seeds were laid down even before the independence. Now, when we are talking about in 1895, there was a Constitution of India bill that was formulated, although this was unofficial and also it was not adopted. However, this was the first time when a written form of a constitution was made for India, and that was done under the leadership of the nationalist leader. Like, for example, we had at that point of time Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and that led to the formulation or the generation of the germination of the seeds of the constitutionalism in India. Later on, it was in 1918 that another unofficial document was formed, that was Annie Besant's Commonwealth of India bill. That was a bill on self-government. Again, it was a bill where a dominion status for India was demanded. However, later on, afterwards, there was Simon Commission that came in 1927, and later on there was a Nehru report that was constructed by Motilal Nehru, and he was the prominent figure for developing this report. Nehru report, it was the first comprehensive constitution draft that was by completely Indians. Later on, when we are talking about the constitutionalism in India, it was M.N. Roy who proposed that the Constituent Assembly should be there, that should be able to, formulate the constitution in India, and that was done in 1934. Later on in 1940, there was August offer that formally accepted. The Britishers, they formally accepted the offer of the constituent body that should be there in India, and it should be responsible for formulating the constitution in India. And ultimately in 1946, we had the Cabinet Mission Plan, after which we had the Constituent Assembly that was formally formed in India, and that was responsible for formulation of the constitution in India. Alright, so it was after the Cabinet Mission Plan, alright, that the Constituent Assembly was formed in India. The total strength in 1946, when it was formed or formulated, it was total 389 members that were there. And out of this, there were 296 members that had to be from the British India, and 93 were from the princely states. Out of these 296 members that were from British India, 4 were from the Chief Commissioner provinces as well. Alright, the members which had to be from Chief Commissioner provinces, they were included in the 296 members that had to be there from the British India. Later on, after the partition, Pakistan was bifurcated, or it was taken away from India, and the number of the members were also decreased, and total members at that point of time were 299 members, out of which 229 were from the provinces and 70 were from the princely states. However, I have to tell you over here that the princely states did not join the Constituent Assembly over here. Now, how this Constituent Assembly was formed? It was through the principle of the indirect election that was conducted through the provincial legislative assemblies, and the seats were divided among Sikhs, Muslims as well as in general. It was Dr. Rajendra Prasad who was elected as the president later on, and he was the president of the Constituent Assembly. So when we are talking about the original structure, this was the original structure where from provinces we had 296 members, from princely states 93 members, and from the Chief Commissioner provinces we had 4 members that were included in this 296 figure. Alright, however, after partition, 299 members stayed in the Constituent Assembly of India. Alright, and this Constituent Assembly was formally, it was responsible for formulating the Constitution of India that was there. Alright, so over here we had just 229 representatives from British Indian provinces, down from 296, and we had 70 representatives from the princely states, down from 93 that were originally in the Constituent Assembly. Now, how this Constituent Assembly formed and worked for formulation of the Constitution of India. So for this purpose, there were specialized committees that were formed or formulated for systematic drafting and also comprehensive deliberation on every aspect of the governance. Like for example, these are the prominent committees that were there at that point of time. Union Power Committee, as well as when we are talking about Union Constitution Committee, was responsible for the powers as well as the the framework of the union government, and that was chairperson by Jawaharlal Nehru, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. All right, there was Rules of Procedure Committee that was chaired by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. We had House Committee that was chaired by Pattabhi Sitaramaiah, as well as Ad hoc Committee on National Flag that was chaired by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. All right, along with this, we had Committee on Fundamental Rights, Minorities and Tribal Affairs that was chaired by Vallabhbhai Patel, and Minorities Subcommittee chaired by J.B. Kriplani, as well as Drafting Committee, very prominent committee that led to the formulation of the final draft of the Constitution that was chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And also we had the States Committee that was chaired by Jawaharlal Nehru once again. All right, so these were the prominent committees that were there, and out of this, the most important committee is the Drafting Committee. All right, the Drafting Committee was basically the architect of the Indian Constitution, which drafted the final draft of the Constitution. It was formed just after the independence, on 29th of August 1947. All right, there were 7 members which were members of the Drafting Committee, chaired by the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the principal architect and even the chief legal mind behind the Constitution of India. All right, the draft was submitted formally the final draft was given on 21st February 1948, which was comprehensive document, and it was presented for debate, and later on different modifications as well amendments were done, and the final adoption of the Constitution was made on 26th November 1949. That was after 114 days of intensive debates as well as deliberations over the final Constitution of India. So over here you can see that these were the members that were present in the Drafting Committee. We had Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chairman. We had K.M. Munshi, Alladi Krishna Swamy Iyer, N. Gopal Swamy Iyengar, B.L. Mittal, who resigned later on and was replaced by Madhav Rao, and Syed Muhammad Sadullah, D.P. Khaitan, who was replaced by T.T. Krishnamachari. So these were the members of the Drafting Committee, very prominent committee of the Constitution. So when we talk about the constitutional craftsmanship, or when the Constitution was formed, it total took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days, the total time that was invested, and there was total cost of 64 lakh that was invested into formulation of the Constitution of India. There were total 165 meetings that were held across 11 sessions of intensive constitutional debate, and the final document, the final Constitution of India, had 395 articles, which are now more than 450 articles, and we had originally 8 schedules, which are now we have 12 schedules in the Indian Constitution. And of course, when it was prepared, and even today, it is the world's lengthiest Constitution in the total globe. Now, these are the key milestones in the Constitution making. The 9th November was the first meeting that was convened, and over here, Dr. Sajjanarhan Sinha was the temporary president. He acted as the temporary president, or the first president of the Constituent Assembly. Later on 11th of December, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, he was elected permanently as the president of the Assembly, and he functioned as president of Assembly, and later on, the first president of India as well. All right, on 29th August 1947, Drafting Committee was formed along with the chairman, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And on 21st February 1948, the draft Constitution was submitted and circulated for the public comments. Later on 4th of November 1948, final draft was introduced in the Assembly. On 4th of November 1948, afterwards we had rigorous debates that began. And on 26th November 1949, the Constitution was formally adopted and signed by the 284 members that were present at that point of time. And on 26th January 1950, the Constitution came into effect fully, and it was then that the India was made republic. All right. Now, we had different sources of the Constitution. It was not just, the deliberation of the minds, but there were different constitutions that were taken into these sources, and these different constitution, or these different borrowed wisdom were taken and later on they were adopted for the Indian vision. All right, like for example, from the United Kingdom, we had taken the parliamentary system that we have in our country, rule of law, as well as the legislative procedure that is there. Along with this, the United States Kingdom, from here, we have taken fundamental rights, judicial review, independence of judiciary. From Ireland, we have taken very prominently directive principles of state policy, which gives us the economic justice as well as socio-economic justice that we have taken from Ireland Constitution of Ireland. From Canada, we have taken the federation with strong center as well as distribution of powers between center and states. From the USSR, former USSR constitution, we have taken fundamental duties as well as social welfare ideals. And from Australia, we have taken concurrent list, freedom of trade across territory. And from the France, we have taken republic ideals, that is liberty, equality, as well as fraternity principles that were borrowed and taken, or they were taken from these different sources. And this was the borrowed wisdom that was then changed into the vision of India, into this particular Constitution of India. Now, when we are talking about the salient features of the Constitution, it is the world's longest or lengthiest Constitution, comprehensively written, where we have deliberated, we have given out all the different kind of powers, all different kinds of, we have different segments which are there, which deliberately gives out a comprehensive detail about fundamental rights, about directive principles, about state and central relationship, about the various constitutional bodies which have been formed and their powers and functions. Everything has been laid down in the Constitution itself. All right, then it is a blend of rigidity as well as flexibility. Now, when we talk about rigidity and flexibility, that is in the terms of the amendment. Now, when we talk about amendment, that we'll be talking about in the latest sessions, latest series, the amendments in the Constitution can be done by either simple majority or either by the special majority, and then special majority can be of two different types again. So now when we are talking about simple majority is where we call it as the flexible kind of the Constitution, but where we have the special majority that is required to amend the Constitution, where the amendment of the Constitution becomes very, very hard. So that is what we call as the rigid Constitution. So we have both the methods of amendment, and that is why the Indian Constitution is blend of both rigidity as well as flexibility. We have adopted the Westminster style of the government, that is, we have adopted the parliamentary form of government that is modeled upon the UK's system, and that is what we have adopted. And again, it is a salient feature of our Constitution. We have the Constitution that have both the features of federalism as well as unitary biasedness as well. All right, when we talk about federalism is nothing where we have, the powers between the center and the states, they have been clearly laid down. All the powers that are between the center and the states. But at the time of the emergency, you must know that the complete power, it comes under the control of the center. So therefore, we are again, along with the blend of rigidity and the flexibility, the Indian Constitution is blend of the federalism with unitary biasness as well. When we talk about the judiciary, we have independent judiciary that is there. And when we are talking about independent judiciary, the judiciary is even integrated. All right, we have integrated and independent judiciary. Integrated judiciary we have taken from UK. And when we talk about independence of the judiciary, that we have taken from the US Constitution. And therefore, the judiciary is the guardian of our Constitution. Then we have the fundamental rights and directive principles of the state policy which have been laid down in the Constitution that provides us with political as well as social and economic justice that is given into the Constitution itself. And the Constitution declares India as secular republic. All right, so we are secular and republic, and what these two terms means and what are different terms means, that we will be discussing in the next session, that would be on the preamble. Now, when we are talking about the philosophical foundation that was based upon the objective resolution that was moved forward into the Constituent Assembly by Jawaharlal Nehru on 13th of December. All right, so Jawaharlal Nehru, he made this historic resolution where he laid down what our objectives would be while framing this Constitution, and that led to the formulation of the philosophical foundation, where we talk about, when we talk about the preamble, we'll be talking about justice, that is social. not just political justice. We are also given the social justice, economic justice, which finds their place in the directive principles of state policy, as well as political equality as well. There is liberty, where we have the freedom of thought, expression and belief. Equality, where we have the equality of status and opportunity for all the citizens. Even we have sovereignty, where we have the complete India. The India as a nation is completely independent authority to govern itself and its citizens. All right. And also when we are talking about fraternity, where the unity and dignity of the individual has been maintained. So these all philosophical foundations, they were there in the objective resolution, which were then taken, and they now find their mention in the preamble, in the word form, and as well as when we are talking about in the philosophy, they find their place inside the Constitution of India. Now, these are the architects of the Indian democracy or Indian Constitution. We had Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who chaired the drafting committee, and he is the principal architect of the Constitution of India. Jawaharlal Nehru, who brought the objective resolution, which laid down the vision for the modern India that we have today. Also, we had Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who integrated the princely states, and also he was responsible for formulating the fundamental rights, because he headed the Fundamental Rights Committee. And Dr. Rajendra Prasad, who was the president of the Constituent Assembly and clearly guided the deliberations to the fulfillment of the Indian Constitution. Then Dr. K.M. Munshi, who advocated, or he is the architect of fundamental rights and directive principles, and even B.N. Rao, who was the constitutional advisor and also an international law expert who was there in the Constitution. So these are the architects of the Constitution. Now, the Constitution was adopted on 26th November 1949. All right, it was adopted. However, the date for the implementation of the Constitution was decided to be 26 January 1950. All right, it came into force on 26 January 1950 because in 1930, 26 January was celebrated as Independence Day. So it was taken into the consideration so that this day we can remember, because this date was chosen for the complete independence in 1930. Poon Swaraj was basically declared on 26 January 1930. All right. So when we are talking about the Indian Constitution, you can understand the ethics and the philosophy of the Indian Constitution in the words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. We are entering into a life of contradiction. We must hold together political equality while social and economic inequality persists. All right, and that is why the framers of the Constitution, they decided that the justice should not be given only politically but also socially and economically as well. So therefore, this Constitution holds very much importance because it is symbol of sovereignty. It laid down the democratic system for the India as country. It also is a blueprint for the social revolution, which has provided the tools for dismantling the centuries of discrimination and build an egalitarian society that is built on directive principles theory or the principles that had been laid down in the directive principles of state policy. And also it provides with the complete governance framework through which we have the legislature, we have the executives, and even judiciary, they function. All right, so this is the complete timeline of the formulation of the Constitution. In 26 July 1949, Labour Party got elected in UK. Later on 16th May, Cabinet Mission was announced. All right, 16th June, Muslim League accepted Cabinet Mission in 1946. On 16th of August, Muslim League announced Direct Action Day. On 2nd September, Congress formed interim government with Nehru as the vice president, and on 13th October, Muslim League joined the interim government. All right, later on 9th of December, the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly was held. On 29th January 1947, Muslim League demanded dissolution of the Constituent Assembly. 16th of July, the last meeting of the interim government was held. Later on, on 11th of August, Jinnah was elected as the president of the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan, and 14th and 15th of August 1947, India got independence, and India and Pakistan was declared. They were partitioned and declared as independent. On 24th January, the Constitution was signed, and the last meeting of the Constituent Assembly was held, where the Constitution was adopted and it was implemented came into force from 26 January 1950. All right, so this is the complete summary of the Constitution, constitutional democracy. 1934, M.N. Roy proposed Constituent Assembly. 1946, Cabinet Mission was announced. Constituent Assembly was formed. 1947 to 1949, Ambedkar Committee drafted the Constitution. Later on 26 November, the Constitution was adopted and it was enforced from 26 January 1950. So this is how, from colonial rule to the constitutional democracy, the complete constitution was formed, and later on, this is how we have achieved as a country the greatest achievement. Alright, so that will be all, but before going, let us test yourself. Alright, so these are some of the questions that you should be able to answer after going through the session. Who originally proposed the idea of a Constituent Assembly for India? Alright, there are certain hints as well that I have given. When was the drafting committee formed? Alright, who moved the historic objective resolution, and how many dates or days of debates occurred before final adoption of the Constitution? Alright, so that would be all, but before going, let me tell you that our next topic would be on preamble of the Constitution, and we will continue with your constitutional journey. Alright, so do not forget to like, share, as well as subscribe to the channel, and also keep learning with us. Alright, so that would be all. Thank you, bye-bye, take care, and Jai Hind.